Parshas Vayechi, the conclusion of the book of Bereshit. And here's where now, just so we get up to it, the Jewish people have now gone down to Egypt. 79 Jews have entered Egypt, and the prophecy that Abraham was given that his descendants will go down to the land of Egypt and they will become slaves there is beginning, right? So they haven't become slaves, but they've gone down to Egypt. That we know has happened. And so it begins by telling us, Vayechi Yaakov Eretz Mitzrayim. So Yaakov, together with all of his children and grandchildren, went down to the land of Egypt, and it says that Yaakov lived in the land of Egypt. How long? Shvat Esrei Shana, for 17 years. Vayiyamei Yaakov, and then it tells you how long Yaakov was alive altogether, and that was 147 years. And then it says, Vayikru Yomei Yisrael Lemus. Now it became close to the time for Yisrael to die. So we notice, of course, the change in his name. Right? Yaakov and Yisrael are the same person. There are many different commentaries that explain why they use one name over another, but in general terms, Yaakov is referring to a man who has wives, he has children, right? But he's a human, he's a father. He's a great man, but he is a human being who has responsibilities to his immediate family. Mm-hmm. And then there's Yisrael, who is the founder of the Jewish nation. Right? From him comes all of the Jews. Right? All of his sons became tribal leaders of the Jewish nation. So there they'll refer to him as Yisrael. So it tells you Yaakov lived in the land of Egypt. Right? He went there with his children and his family, and he lived in the land of Egypt. Then it says that Israel was about to die. That means that the founder of the Jewish nation, now on a higher spiritual plane, he's getting closer to the days of his death. Now, notice here that Yosef is informed that his father is dying and that his father is not well. This is the first time in the Torah that you have reference to somebody being ill. Not being in pain, like Abraham was in pain following surgery, but actually having a sickness. And the Medrash and Talmud tell us that actually, up until this point, people did not get sick. Mm-hmm. When it was time for someone to die, they would sneeze and they would die because there was no illness. There's no such thing. And it says that Yaakov prayed to God that people should have the opportunity to know they're going to die before they die, so that they can put everything in order, they can make peace with their family, their whatever, but the end of their life should be able to know that it's about to happen. So it says that from then on, people became sick. There was no sickness until then. It was just, you're alive or you were dead. So therefore it says here, right, it says that Yosef is informed. Right, if we read it here, it says, the time approached for Israel to die, so he called his son for Joseph, and he says, please, have I found favor in your eyes? Please take an oath. Don't bury me in Egypt. Bury me with my forefathers. And Yosef tells him that I will do that. And then a little bit later in the same page, and it says, it came to pass that someone said to Joseph, behold, your father is ill. This is the first time we find this anywhere in the Torah, and that's because that's actually a good thing. Now, we consider it a good thing that a person knows they're going to die. Not that a person should be surprised. And when we deal with literature, or even with current events, you have somebody who's in a plane, the plane blows up, and you ask, what happened? Well, they died immediately. At least they didn't suffer. That's what we say. But the truth is that we believe that to have the knowledge that one is going to die and to have the ability to do something because of it is an important thing. And therefore, we don't really always believe that the best thing is for a person to die like instantly without knowing, but to actually know that that's going to happen. One of the things that Talmud tells us is that a person before they die, an average person before they die knows they're going to die today. Mm-hmm. So you ask people today, is it true? So a lot of people will think it's not true, and that's because of drugs. We can take enough drugs when a person's in the hospital and they're dying and they're in pain, so the hospital will give them drugs so they're not in pain, but it also impairs their mind, so they may not realize the situation they're in. But if a person has a clear mind, they will know that they're dying. Mm-hmm. And it's a positive thing that a person should know this, so that they should be able to talk to their family, take care of whatever business they need to before that happens. Otherwise, it's spontaneous and we don't know. So this is where we see it from. So it says then at the bottom of this page, Vayechi achrei devarim, and after this, V'omer leYosef, someone went to Yosef, and he says, Hine avicha chola, your father is sick. V'yikach shnei banav imo. So Yosef goes and he takes his two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. Es Manasseh v'es Ephraim. He takes Manasseh and Ephraim. V'yagid leYaakov, and they go and they say to Yaakov, right? And they said, V'omer, Hine bincha Yosef ba. Somebody comes to Yaakov and says, here comes your son Yosef. Right? He's coming to see you. And it says that Vayischazek Yisrael v'yashev alamita. So at that point, Yaakov suddenly becomes Yisrael again, because now he is not just Yosef's father, he is the head of the Jewish people. And it says he strengthens himself and he sits up. Right? He's dying, so he has to lay down. He feels his son is coming out of respect for his son, and the fact that he wants to convey a message to him. He sits up, and that takes a lot of effort. Yomer Yaakov, and then it goes back to being Yaakov again. El Yosef. So now Yaakov, Yosef's father, says to him, right? God appeared to me, and he says, and he blessed me. V'yomer Elai, and he said, I'll read it in English. He said, I'll make you fruitful and numerous, and I'll make you a congregation of nations. I will give this land to your offspring after you as an eternal possession. And now your two sons. So that's the end of what Yaakov says that God told him. Mm-hmm. Now Yaakov says the following to Yosef. And now your two sons who were born to you in the land of Egypt, before my coming to you in Egypt, shall be mine. Ephraim and Manasseh shall be mine like Reuben and Shimon. What he's saying is the following. Yosef's sons are Yaakov's grandchildren, right? They're not his children, right? Yosef was his child. So he's saying that Ephraim and Manasseh are extraordinary people. They should be considered like my sons, not like my grandsons, right? They should be considered on a higher level, right? And therefore we notice, and a lot of times, for instance, when you count the tribes, sometimes they count the tribes, they'll count Ephraim and Manasseh. Sometimes they won't. They'll count Yosef, because Yosef is a tribe, and from Yosef came Ephraim and Manasseh. But sometimes they will count Ephraim and Manasseh and not count Yosef, because he says that your two children are like my children. Just like Reuben and Shimon are my first children, your two children are going to be like mine. So he gives them the status of being the heads of tribes, even though they're the next generation. And we see a lot of very interesting things about Ephraim and Manasseh. For instance, every Friday night and on holidays when we bless our children, right, we tell the boys, you should be like Ephraim and Manasseh. You'd say, well, that's a funny thing. Why do you say be like Abraham and Isaac? Why don't you say like Yehuda and Shimon? Right? Why Ephraim and Manasseh? So the commentaries give lots of reasons pertinent to what we're saying here, is that Ephraim and Manasseh, we were told, have potential like everybody else. Everyone has potential, and a person who really works in themselves will fulfill their potential. Mm-hmm. That is, they'll become the best they can be. That's not easy. That takes a lot of effort, right? Because we have an enormous amount of potential, every one of us. In order to fulfill our potential is an enormous amount of work. So we're told that Ephraim and Manasseh were such that they not only were able to fulfill their potential, but they went beyond it. They were able to raise their potential. It almost sounds like an absurd statement, but because of their efforts, they went and God reevaluated it, which is why they were considered like on a higher level than they really were. They were considered like Yaakov's children rather than his grandchildren, because they did that. And that's one of the reasons why we bless our children, that they should not only fulfill their potential, become the best they can be, but they should go to the point where that God even gives them additional potential. They become even greater than they originally might have been. That's one. Another commentary, which is much more common, asks the question, why do we bless our children that you should be like Ephraim and Manasseh? Like, why not like any other two characters? Like, pick two characters you want your children to be like. So it says that Ephraim and Manasseh were the first of the Jewish leaders of any sort to be born outside of Israel, to be born in the dispersion, because they were born in Egypt, right? And therefore it was a prophecy, so to speak, that our children who are born outside of Israel should be as great as Ephraim and Manasseh, who had a very unique test, which was to remain loyal to Jewish life, even though they never were a part of it in Israel. They were born into the house of Pharaoh. Right? Their father was a part of Pharaoh's house, and on that basis, he would, they were raised in the corrupt society of Egypt, and nevertheless, they stayed loyal to Jewish belief, and that's what we tell our children. That it's not your fault. The reality is, we were born into this place. We were born in the way we're born, into another land. And nevertheless, we're blessing you to be like Ephraim and Manasseh, who were born into a uncivilized, civilized, but certainly an uncouth and a corrupted society. And nevertheless, they rose to fulfill their potential. So too, we bless our children that way, and that fits them. That's one of the reasons why. Another one is that when we say that they're blessed like Ephraim and Manasseh, really it should be like Manasseh and Ephraim, because Manasseh is older, and we switch the names. And you see Yaakov does the same thing. He puts his right hand on the older one, right, and the left hand on the younger one, but he doesn't. He switches his hands. And Yosef, it's in the parsha here. Yosef tells him, Father, you're getting a bit feeble. You're mixing up the kids. And he says, no, I know who I'm talking about. And the fact is that the younger one will be great, was prophesied to be greater than the older one. Now that happens sometimes. But why do we bless our children like Ephraim and Manasseh is that the younger one, who would be greater than the older one, did not hold it over the older one, and the older one did not take offense that his younger brother was greater than him. And if you had these two brothers who were able to get past this and not have sibling rivalry and fighting among the brothers, then that's a blessing that we want our children to have. Our children should also grow up with that ability to see that we're all different and we have different strengths and weaknesses, but nevertheless, even if the younger one is greater than the older one should be able to deal with it, and the younger one should not hold it over his head, and they should be able to live that way. That's really the idea. Those are a number of reasons why we say this blessing. So Yaakov now goes on and he talks to he's going to bless the children, and he does one other funny thing. If you look in 270 and 271, it says, "And now your two sons were born to you in the land of Egypt before my coming, right, Ephraim and Manasseh." Then it says, "But as for me, when I came from Padan, Rachel died in the land of Canaan on the road, while there was still a stretch of land to go to Ephrat, and I buried her there on the road to Ephrat, which is Bethlehem. Then Yisrael saw Joseph's sons, and he said, 'Who are these?'" He just blessed them. Right? Now he's asking, who are they? What does that mean? So Yosef thinks his father's getting feeble. He says, "These are my sons whom God has given me here." So he says, "Bring them to me so I can bless them." And then he blesses them. And he gives them the blessing that I just said on the next page. That's odd. He knows who they are when his name is Yaakov. He doesn't know who they are when his name is Israel. The same person. Now you see his name change, and he doesn't know who they are. So it's not that he doesn't know who they are. He's making a statement. Israel, as the founder of the Jewish nation, right, had 12 sons. Suddenly these two come, right, and they're treated as if they were sons. And so Israel, who is trying to say, who are they to the Jewish nation? Who are they as people? And here, this is where we get the idea that they rose to such a high potential that they were recognized as being even higher than they were normally would have been. And that's why he asks who they are, so that he should be told just what I just said. And now he's going to bless them. And if you look in verse 17, Joseph saw that his father was placing his right hand on Ephraim's head, and it displeased him, because he should put his right hand on Manasseh's head, who was older. So he supported his father's hand to remove it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. And Joseph said to his father, "Not so, father, this is the firstborn. Place your right hand on his head." But his father refused, saying, "I know, my son, I know. He too will become a people, and he too will become great, yet his younger brother shall become greater than he, and his offspring's fame will fill the nations." So he blessed them that day, saying, "By you shall Israel be blessed," saying, "May God bless you like Ephraim and like Manasseh." And he put Ephraim before Manasseh. And then Israel says to Joseph, "Behold, I'm about to die. God will be with you, and will bring you back to the land of your forefathers." And he says then, and it says, as for me, I have given you Shechem. Yosef was given the city of Shechem as a as a gift by his father. One portion more than your brothers, which I took from the hand of the Amorite with my sword and my bow. So here he says that, right, that he went and he took this land from the Amorite. Right, he means from Esau, and he took him with my sword and my bow. We don't see anywhere that Yaakov has a bow and arrow and a sword, and he goes around killing people, going to war to try to take things. So Rashi explains, as he's borrowed by, what are you talking about, my sword and my bow? So Rashi says, "Kshahargu Shimon v'Levi asanshe Stom Shechem nichnasu kol zvosayam lizdavig lehem." So he says simply it means that my children, Shimon and Levi, went into the city of Shechem and killed everybody with their sword and their bow. So they did it. They're my children. I'm responsible, and I'm giving you that city. But another one is that the explanation Rashi says is that my sword and my bow are my prayers. Now, what is the weapons of a Jew? Weapons of a Jew are his prayers. That we pray to God and God responds to us. So if we're in a situation where the nations are attacking us and they're much more advanced than us, we pray to God and God can do anything. God helps us. So that's what he means here by my sword and my bow. That he doesn't mean it means my Torah learning and my prayers. He doesn't mean literally that he had a bow and arrow. But if you want to say that he had a bow and arrow, then he's referring to his sons who used the sword and a bow and arrow in order to kill all the men of Shechem back when they stole Dinah in that story. Now Jacob says to his sons, right, he brings his sons and he says, "Come here and I want to tell you what's going to happen in the end of days." That's what it says in the English. "Gather yourselves and listen, O sons of Jacob, and listen to Yisrael your father." So now the sons of Jacob, right, he's a father gathering his sons, but Yisrael, the founder of the Jewish nation, is going to address them. It's the same person, but he's addressing them in another way. And here what's he going to address them? He says he's going to tell them the future, the end of days. He's going to tell them when the Messiah is coming. When is it that all of this trouble and all of this problems, you're about to enter into the land of Egypt? All of the Jewish people, they're going to become slaves. They're going to be suffer so much for hundreds of years. So Yaakov wants to say to them, listen, don't give up hope. There's always a brighter day. We're going to go through the next few hundred years of slavery, but there's a reason for it, and you will come out. Right? So he says he wants to tell them when they're going to come out. And as he goes through the blessing, it becomes clear that God doesn't want him to tell. And we'll see in the blessings, he doesn't tell them. And he doesn't say. I'll show you where. And it's a very interesting point. He goes through all of these blessings, talking about each child. And I'm going to go back to them, but I want to get to the one that I just told you. If you look on the bottom of 278 and 279, it says, Dan will avenge his people. The tribes of Israel will be united as one. Dan will be a serpent on the highway, a viper by the path that bites a horse's heel so its rider falls backward. For your salvation do I long, O Hashem. So here he says, there's a tribe called Dan, the tribe of Dan, from his son Dan. Right? He's going to start a nation. He's going to have his own tribe. And what is the symbol of the tribe is that Dan is like a snake who's on the road, and when a horse, much bigger, comes by, the horse can trample its head and kill the snake, or the snake can jump up and bite the horse in the leg, which causes the horse to jump up and causes the man riding the horse to fall off. So Dan is like the snake that bites the horse. A little guy, right, causes a big effect, right? And Dan was considered a very weak, small nation from all the nations. However, there's a very famous historical character that comes from Dan by the name of Shimshon, Samson. Right? Shimshon came later on, and Shimshon was Mashiach. He was the Mashiach, but he failed. Yeah, you see, there's a couple types of Mashiachs in the world. There's a Mashiach that's going to come and do what the Mashiach does. There's a Mashiach who's false, like Shabtai Tzvi. He's not really Mashiach. He thinks he is. People tell him he is, but he's not. That's false Messiah. Then you have failed Messiah. A failed Messiah is someone who is Mashiach, but either he himself fails and he doesn't live his life in the way he should, and therefore he fails to act as Messiah, or the Jews around him fail, and they're not deserving of the Messiah. Either way, the Messiah doesn't come. So here Yaakov says, I'm going to tell you about the coming of the Mashiach. And he starts blessing every one of his children. And he gets to Dun, and he says that you're a snake who bites the horse. The horse then jumps up, throws the rider off. So so here you have this snake. All it does is bite, little snake. Right? It's not as powerful as a horse, but yet it causes the horse to injure the rider, which is the purpose of why he does this. But then he stops and he says, "V'yeshuasecha kavisi Hashem." Right? As I said, for your how does he say it in English here? Dam will be a snake. For your salvation, do I long, O Hashem. Right? What's going on here? He's giving every son a blessing. He goes to the son Dun. He says, you're going to have in the future, you're going to have a offspring by the name of Shimshon. Shimshon will be an amazingly extraordinary person, but he'll fail. And he is the Mashiach, and he'll fail. The Mashiach will not come then. He'll have to come another time. And then he says, and God, I await your redemption. That's how I told you before. Yaakov says to his sons, "Oh, come gather around. I want to tell you when Mashiach's coming." And this is it. He tells them, Dun has got a child named Shimshon. Shimshon's a Mashiach, but he's going to fail. So he can't. So he says, "God, I wait for your answer. I don't know when. I can't give you the answer." He tells his kids. God did not want him to tell his kids when the Mashiach was going to come. So he takes away his prophetic ability to tell them. But as close as he gets is the story of Shimshon. And Shimshon is an extraordinary character because he is the Messiah. He is Mashiach. But he fails in his job. And therefore, we're still waiting for the Mashiach to come.
But we don't know when Mashiach will come, even if it was Shimshon. What happens about that? None of us know who.
We don't, but Shimshon's come and gone already.
Yeah, that I know.
So that's why he says it. Now let's go back to the beginning of the blessing. Let's talk about some of these. First thing is, we know, I don't think you have to be a psychologist to know that Yaakov's sons have some problems. They don't get along, right? I mean, maybe for the most part, but they sold Yosef, right? And later on, you'll see when Yaakov dies, they are honestly afraid that Yosef will kill them. That he's just waiting for their father to die so he could have revenge for what they did to him. They really believe he might do this. So there's definitely sibling issues, right? Mm-hmm. So then Yaakov says, bring all my sons come here so I can tell you the end of times. He's going to bless them. He's going to bless each child. Before he dies, he wants to bless each child, right? Strengthen his strengths, lessen his weaknesses. So he looks into each child's soul and he sees that and he blesses them based on that. The thing is that if you look at the wording, he blesses each child separately. But he says all of them have to stand around. So he's telling one son, you're going to be the king. He tells another son, you're going to be the scholar. Another one, he tells him, you're going to be a businessman. Right? And that's where your strength is, and that's where your tribe will be. Right? You'll be a Kohen. Right? Now, that's going to cause sibling rivalry. Right? Why does Yaakov do that? He could just say one at a time, come into my room. I don't have to have all of you come in. So I should, in front of all 12, I should say, you're the best of the group. They're going to be the Kohen. You're so smart. You're going to be the king. You're going to be this. Everybody's going to be jealous of each other. Just don't just don't have them around. Just bring in the guy and say, okay, you're going to be the king. You're going to be the scholar. Don't go and say it in front of everybody. Why does he do that? Because we know that there is this problem. It's not made up. I'm not guessing it might be. They sold Yosef. They wanted to kill him. Right? So they had this ability to do this. So this was, according to the commentaries, Yaakov's doing this was showing that the brothers had repaired this problem. They had a problem. They were prepared to kill their brother Yosef. Right or wrong, they were prepared to do it, which by definition would be wrong. Therefore, Yaakov goes and he puts them into another tense situation. Their father is about to die. Their father's about to die, right? That's a tense situation for kids. He puts them in that situation and he starts telling one, you're going to be good at this, and you got this, and you're the most handsome, and you're the smartest. And he puts them in a situation where they can fight with each other, and they don't do it. So Yaakov gave them a test, and they passed the test. They were better people. They weren't the same people who sold Yosef anymore. They were now higher than that. They had repaired the damage they did. They were on a higher level. And that's what he was doing. That's why he did this all together rather than each one separately. Right? He wanted them to be there. So let's take a look at some of the blessings and see if we can understand them a bit. So he begins with Reuven, but there's a couple that I want to talk about. If you look on 277, you have Shimon and Levi. Shimon and Levi are comrades. Their weaponry is a stolen craft. What does it mean, their weaponry is stolen craft? I told you before, what is the weapons of the Jews? Prayers and Torah. What did Shimon and Levi use? Swords. Shimon and Levi, they wanted to avenge their sister. Their sister was kidnapped and raped and held hostage. So they went in and they killed every male in the whole city and took their sister back and left. Right? So they used the weapons of the world, not the weapons of the Jews, which is prayer. There's a time that you have to do this. But because of it, it says Shimon and Levi are comrades. Their weaponry is a stolen craft. They're using somebody else's weapons, not our weapons. Into their conspiracy my soul may not enter. I don't want to be like them. With their congregation, don't join. O my honor, for in their rage they murdered people, and at their whim they hamstrung an ox. Accursed is their rage, for it is intense, and their wrath, for it is harsh. I will separate them within Jacob. I will disperse them in Israel. So Jacob says that what they did was wrong. They went and they tricked all of the men of this city that they should circumcise themselves so that our sister can marry you. They never had any intent for their sister to marry him. The guys circumcised themselves. When they're weak from the circumcision, they come in and kill them all and say, this is what you get for taking our sister, and they take their sister back and they go. Yaakov felt that this was not right. They might have been deserving of it, and it might even have been right, but they tricked them. Maybe it was right, they killed them. So then go in there and kill them. Don't go and tell them one story and do another. Don't go to them and say, we're the Jewish people. God has a good relationship with us. So if you want to have a relationship with us, you have to circumcise yourself just like we do. So these people think, okay, we're prepared to do what we got to do. We want to be close to the Jews. And they lied to them. They didn't want them to be like them. They wanted them to be weak so they could kill them. There was no mitzvah for them to circumcise themselves. Right? This was a trick. And that Yaakov felt was wrong. That's not how we do things. We don't, even if you think that it might be the best way to accomplish your goal when you go to war is not to be honest, we are honest. We don't do that. And therefore he says, don't count me among them. That what they did was wrong. The Gemara tells us that in this blessing/curse, there was a premonition as what they were going to do. What do you think Yaakov says? My two sons who go in and murder a whole city, right? They're hotheads. Like, what does he destine them to become? Remember, I told you Yehuda is the king, right? Different ones had different roles. What was the roles of Shimon and Levi? Anyone want to guess? Their role was they were going to be the rabbis and the teachers. They say that's who you want. The guys who get up with a sword and kill people, right? That's who you want for rabbis and teachers. The point is, yeah, that is who we want. We want people with passion, with feeling. Right? This guy comes in and takes their sister and rapes her and won't give her back. So what do? Let's not make trouble. Let's not make any noise. So you don't want to say anything. Right? Does it want to be like that? Mm-hmm. Or you want to just kill everybody? What do you want to do? So Shimon and Levi, right, they had passion. They had feeling. They said, we can't just let them do this. They are disgracing our sister. They're disgracing us. They're disgracing our father. We can't allow this. So they went in and they did it. It wasn't the fact of what they did was the problem. It was that they did it in a way they weren't honest. They went in and said to him, of course we're going to let you marry our sister. Just circumcise yourself. Now, they didn't come in and say, give us our sister back or you're dead. They never said that. They said, okay, no problem. They tricked them. And the tricking was what Yaakov didn't like. Why did they do it? Because they were passionate. They felt it. It's one thing to know something. It's a whole other thing to feel it. Mm-hmm. And I talk sometimes about this rabbi. He was just here this weekend, who I've learned a lot from. And one time he was teaching us how to give a drasha, a rabbi speech. How do you do it? So we're going through different things. So he says, let me illustrate. And he tells us a couple of lines from the Torah and a story. Now he's not telling us a drasha. He's not giving us a speech. He's teaching us how to give speeches, right? So, you know, you don't expect it to be perfect. He's just spontaneously saying, let me show you how this works. And he starts to do a speech. Well, he starts to give this speech with, besides the fact that it was quite interesting and well spoken, he starts to cry in the middle of the speech because he tells a story about his grandfather. Now, I said this when I introduced him this weekend. I said, I suddenly realized that this man, who was a brilliant Harvard-educated PhD, right, a well-known rabbi, right, this man is full of emotions. He's not like, very often you meet intellectuals, real smart people. They don't have any emotions. They keep them to themselves. They're sort of dry. They're sort of quiet. You know, you don't really see much. Lots of times, people who aren't brilliant, right, will often be very emotional, real, right. This man was brilliant and emotional. So here he is, not even giving us a speech, telling us how to give a speech. He includes a story about his grandfather, and he starts to cry in the middle of the speech, right? Which I found extremely, you know, enlightening for me to understand what it means to convey a message. Right? He didn't mean to start crying. He just couldn't tell the story without it doing it because he was so emotionally bound. So that's how Shimon and Levi were. Shimon and Levi. If you would have gone up to Shimon and Levi and say, "Are you allowed to kill the whole city of people because they took a woman against her will?" So they'd say, "No, you can't kill the whole city. Go back and get her. Go get her. If you have to kill a couple of people, that's one thing. But everybody, you don't have to kill everybody, right?" But they did. Why? Because they were passionate. And if you want to be a rabbi and a teacher, you have to be passionate. You have to have feeling. You have to have intellect, but you have to have feeling. If you don't want to teach children, right, it won't work. I remember one time when I first got married, I needed work. So I was in school. So in the summertime, I was off. So I took a job like working at a summer camp, a day camp. I hated it. Like, all you did all day was, like, you know, the kids play baseball, soccer, you stand around, you watch them do it, and you make sure they don't cause trouble. It was horrible. I hated it. And you know, I had to talk to kids all the time. Not that I have anything against kids, but I had to talk like I was a kid to the kids. And, you know, spend all your time with that, right? It's, you know, I can understand how mothers can get frustrated when all they have is little kids, like, in diapers all the time. I get to talk about, you know, going to the bathroom. That's about all you talk about, or what you eat. It's like, you know, you have women with great educations, and that's what they have to do. Right? It's part of life. But the point is that you know, a person who has a great education, a person who's an intellect, very often want to be in intellectual situations, and they don't necessarily have great emotional control. Right? And yet this fellow did. Right? That's what they did. But if you want to have a rabbi, you want to have a rabbi who feels for you, not just talks to you. Mm-hmm. If you have a teacher, you want a teacher who cares about you, not just teaches you. Right? That's who Shimon and Levi were. That's why, as much as you'd think these are the last two people I want my children to be influenced by, because they went around killing people, you're wrong. You might not agree with the situation, but you agree with the passion. Right? That's what was going on here. That's why they were blessed the way they were. You then have later on 277, Yehuda. Yehuda, you, your brothers, shall acknowledge your hand will be at your enemies. Nape, your father's sons will prostrate themselves to you. A lion cub is Yehuda from my prey, my son. You elevated yourself. He crouches down like a lion, and like an awesome lion who dares rouse him. The scepter shall not depart from Yehuda, nor a scholar from among his descendants until Shiloh arrives, and he will be an assemblage of nations. Here Yehuda is being told you are going to be the king. The tribe of Yehuda are the kings of the Jews. When I told the story of Hanukkah, and I said that the Jewish people have an army, why didn't in the story of Hanukkah, didn't they use the army? They had a bunch of Kohanim fighting a war against the Greeks. Why didn't he get the army to fight against the Greeks? The army was Yehuda, the tribe of Yehuda. That's who they are. The Yehuda is the government. He is the king. He's the prince. He's the head of the army. He's the general. Him and his family after him. They're the ones who handle this aspect of Jewish life. Right? That's who Yehuda was. So why? Because Yehuda showed himself to be a king. We saw in last week's Parsha that when Yosef took Binyamin and he didn't know who Yosef was, he stood up to him. Right? He said, the little ghetto Jew, like they like to call us sometimes, wouldn't have the guts to stand up to a king. Right? The king doesn't need to say, don't make any trouble. Let's just go. Right? But that's not the way Yehuda was. Yehuda said, this is wrong. He took our brother. And if he kills me, he kills me, but I'm not going to let him get away with this. And he stands right up to the face of Yosef, not knowing it's Yosef, thinking it's the second most powerful man in the world, which he was, and telling him, I'll kill you if you don't give me my brother back. Right? Like, he's the king, so he's king to king now. So from there we see that he should be king. We also know from Yehuda comes King David. From King David comes the Messiah, who is the king, the ultimate king of the Jewish people. We also say, but why Yehuda? So we get this from his name. You notice that Jews, in almost every language, I only know of one language where we're not called Jews. In almost every language, right, they call us, right, Jew. It comes from the word Jew, Yudin, Yidin, right, Jud, right, whatever language, this comes from Jew, meaning Yehuda. In Italian, it's Hebreo, from Hebrew, but that's because it's an ancient language, back before, when we were still called Hebrews and they were Romans. But in general, every language calls us Jews. Why? Just like in English, we're called Jews. Because we don't all come from the tribe of Yehuda. I don't, I'm a Levi. So lots of us don't come from the tribe of Yehuda. So why are we called Jews? Because what does it mean to be a Jew? When Yehuda got his name, his mother said, Pam ha'hoda es Hashem, this time I will give praise to God. Hoda and Yehuda, same, right? Hoda is praise, because I received more than I deserve. Because his mother Leah, right, had more sons than any other woman in the family. There were 4 wives, 12 sons, 3 to a wife, right? Makes sense. Each wife should have 3. She's on her 4th. Yehuda's the 4th. So she says, I want to praise God because I've got more than I deserve. I don't deserve 4, and I got 4. But this is how a Jew has to look at the world. We have to look at the world and say, I have to praise God because whatever I have is more than I deserve. What do I deserve? Why does God give me life? Why does God make me have a living? Why does God give me food to eat? Why does God give me joy and happiness and children and a wife? Why does he do that? I don't deserve it. It's not coming to me. He does it because he wants to be kind. A Jew has to realize that everything in our life is because God gives it to us, not because we deserve it. Right? And that's why we're called Jews. The world doesn't know this, doesn't realize why, but we have to realize why. That we have to realize that the main idea of who we are is because God gave it to us. God gave us intelligence, gave us the ability to make a living, gave us peace, gave us the ability to be who we are. Right? That's what it means. So therefore, the tribe that's known as that's the king of the Jews, because he knows this. Yehuda was regal. Yehuda was a king. He acted like a king. But he always knew that it all comes from God. We have to be the same way. We're part of the Jews. Right? Do you know the first time we were called Jews in history? Anyone know? First time was in the Megillah. Vashti calls us Jews. Yehudim, she says, the Jews, she's insulting us. The Jews won't come and be with everybody else. They're different. Right? So you have it in the Megillah. It's the first time that we're actually called the Jews. Because up until then, you had your tribes. And even in the story of the Megillah, Mordecai is called a Binyaminite. He's Ish Yamini, came from Binyamin, and he did. Binyamin was his great-grandfather, but he came from that tribe. But nevertheless, he's still called a Jew, and we're all called Jews for that reason, because we have to realize that everything we have comes from that. Then here it says, so he says, a lion cub is Judah. Right? That's Gur Aryeh Yehuda. He's like a young lion. What's a young lion? It looks like you see that, like the Disney show, The Lion King. Mm-hmm. It's like a toy, little kid, big, little tiny cat with big feet, right? Big feet, because the feet show you what he's going to be like, right? But that's the point. Yehuda is like a little cute cat, but he's got the power, right? The power of a lion. Lion is the most regal of animals, not necessarily the most powerful animal, but he's the most regal of animals, and that's who Yehuda was. So he's just starting. He's just a cub. He's going to play around. He's going to roll around. He's going to do right, but eventually he will be the great man that he'll become. And it says the scepter shall not depart from Yehuda. What it means is that there will not be anybody who says that they're a king of the Jews, they must be from Yehuda. If they're not from Yehuda, they're not king. And this happened in Jewish history. The Hashmonim, who right, fought the war of Hanukkah, right? That tribe, that group of people, they were Kohanim. They fought the war of Hanukkah. After the war was over, the Hashmonim made themselves king of the Jews. They shouldn't have been king. They weren't Yehuda. They were Kohanim. They were from the tribe of Levi. They should not have been king. And it says in the Gemara that if anybody comes to you, and this was in the 1st century, and says, I'm from the Hashmonim, right? And they want to say how great I am. I come from the Hashmonim. My family, I'll trace myself back. They're lying. Because the Hashmonim were either destroyed or became slaves. In other words, God would not allow them because they took the scepter from Yehuda. It says the scepter will not depart from Yehuda. Yehuda is the king. Nobody else can be the king. They said, we're king. They temporarily, because it's a necessity, we fought the war, the Yehuda is not up to it right now. Doesn't matter. He doesn't say it shouldn't depart from Yehuda unless there's a reason. It doesn't work. They went, they did it, and the Gemara says if somebody tells you that they're from the tribe of the Hashmonim, of the Maccabees, then you should know that they're either lying or they're the children of slaves. And it means they're also lying. They're lying for some reason you don't know, or they don't want you to know that their background are slaves. So they tell you, my family are kings. And they're not. Right? There's no such thing. They were wiped out. Because they were wiped out because they acted like kings. Right? And then it goes on, it says in verse 13, Zvulun shall settle by seashores. He shall be at the ship's harbor, and his last border will reach Zidon. Yisachar is a strong-boned donkey. He rests between the boundaries. He saw tranquility, that it was good, and the land it was pleasant. Yet he bent his shoulder to bear. Zvulun and Yisachar are two brothers, and their blessing is next to each other for a number of reasons. One is that there's an agreement between Zvulun and Yisachar. Yisachar is known as the scholars. Traditionally, if you were from the people who were the tribe of Yisachar, were scholars. They were intelligent. They were raised to be the ones who were the scholars of the Jewish nation. If you had a question of Jewish law, you would ask the tribe of Yisachar. The tribe of Zvulun were businessmen. It says they're settled by seashores. They'll be at a ship's harbor. Right? In the ancient days, a businessman had a boat. You went from country to country selling and buying, right? That's what they did. They didn't have trains, they didn't have cars, they didn't have airplanes. You did business with a boat. So Zvulun had boats. Zvulun was a businessman. So they said, Zvulun and Yisachar made a deal among themselves. Yisachar would learn. How do you eat if you learn? How do you eat? If you want to learn Torah all day, how are you going to eat? Where are you going to get money to eat? Who's going to pay you? So it says Zvulun made a deal with him. Yisachar will learn all day, Zvulun will work. Now Zvulun will also do some learning. Everybody has to learn. But he won't dedicate himself to learning like Yisachar does. On the other hand, Zvulun, we made a deal with Yisachar. It's going to be 50-50. We're going to support you the same way we support ourselves. So if I work all day and I'm a millionaire, you get $500,000. Right? That's what they tells him. But I get half of your learning. Right? I get half of the merit that you get for what you do, right? But you get half my money. And that was a deal they made. Throughout history, we've had this happen many times, called the Yisachar Zvulun arrangement, where you'll have somebody who clearly, you meet somebody and they are an extraordinary person, and they have potential to be a great scholar, but they don't have the money to be a great scholar. Right? I come across some people like this sometimes. They just have amazing mental ability, they work on themselves, they have great character traits, but frankly, they don't know how to add. I mean, they can add. It's like me. I can't keep a checkbook very well. Right? Thank God you don't have to anymore. You don't have checkbooks really. But it's hard for me. Right? Some people, like I have a son who's an accountant. It's like this for him. Like I call him up and I ask him these. I ask him all the time, can I do this? Can I do this? Can I do this? Right? But I don't know. On the other hand, I have my strengths. So you have Yisachar and Zvulun, right? Arrangements even today, where you'll have somebody who's got amazing potential, but he can't make a living. So somebody will say to him, all right, I'm going to give you some money, but some of your merit comes to me. And this is how God does it. He makes it so it's true. It really happens. That's why when you give money when you give tzedakah, tzedakah doesn't go to schools. The tzedakah is there's two ways of understanding the word tzedakah. Tzedakah, in the loose way that we usually use it, means you're giving charitable causes. You're giving money to help a cause, right? Any good Jewish cause is tzedakah. That's not really true. That's the colloquialism. That's the way we say it when we talk. Literally, tzedakah means money for the poor. If you give money to my shul, it's not literally tzedakah unless I support the poor. But if I have, let's say, a school, and everybody who comes to my school pays tuition, but tuition is $10,000 a year, but the cost is $12,000 a year. So I go and I raise money, and you give me $2,000. Right? You're not giving tzedakah. Tzedakah is for the poor, right? Not for Torah education. There's another mitzvah of giving money for Torah education, supporting Torah institutions, supporting the community, supporting needs. That's a different mitzvah, and you give a portion of your money for this. When you give meiser, you give your 10%. Mm-hmm. It's not just for the poor, but when you are giving for the poor, you give for the poor. You can give for other things as well, right? So that we have to understand there's a difference. So when somebody comes to you for tzedakah, literally it means for the poor. So like we have appeals here. Like I'll do an appeal twice a year for the poor. People who come to our shul or people who are in the community who can't make it. Right? And people will give me, thank God, we raise a lot of money. I mean, you wouldn't believe the amount of money that people give us to support the poor in our community. And the amount of money we need. Both are true. Right? It's both very important. But people give for that. Then we also have appeals to keep the shul going. You have membership fees. Membership fees are about 80% of what we need to keep our shul going. Right? Our shul is not that big, but we offer more programs than the biggest shuls in the country. Like we offer constantly. People are always telling me they can't believe how many things we do, how many programs and classes and events. And all the time we're doing stuff. That's one of the things that's special about us. But it costs money. Right, so you give money to the shul, you come to our dinner, you give money on Simchas Torah, you give a pledge, somebody gets an aliyah, you give some money, that type of stuff, that goes to the shul. That's not tzedakah in the literal sense. That's supporting Torah, which is important. So when you give money, an arrangement, Yisachar and Zvulun, right, so you are supporting the poor. Mm-hmm. That's what you're doing. But the poor person you're supporting is learning Torah, and therefore you get some of his merit. God makes it that way, so that some of the merit from his learning goes to you, because he couldn't learn if it wasn't for you. Right? Just like you couldn't learn if you didn't have a parent. If he didn't have a father, he wouldn't be born. Right? He didn't have a mother, he wouldn't be born. He needs his parents. He also needs somebody to support him. Right? Some people are fortunate; their parents can support them. Right? And you see that, but lots of people can't, and they need others. Right? So that's what that deal is here. Well, we did the one of done. Right? That was the next one. We talked about that. It goes through. Now, let's talk about Joseph. I'm skipping a few. The bottom of 280 and 281, verse 22. Here, God, now he's going to give Jacob is giving a blessing to Joseph. Remember, Joseph is his favorite son. Even though he was taken away all these years, he came back. He's his favorite son. It doesn't change. Right or wrong, by the way, our forefathers make mistakes. Right? Clearly, we see it over and over and over again. Yaakov keeps making the same mistake. He favors Yosef over the brothers. The brothers try to kill him. He favors the younger grandson over the older grandson. You see, he doesn't take into account, it appears, the failings of human beings. In other words, he might be above it, but clearly not everybody else is above it. So here we see, how does he bless his favorite son? So he says, a charming son is Joseph. Poris Yosef, right? A charming son to the eye. Each of the girls climbed heights to gaze. They embittered him and became antagonists. The arrow-tongued men hated him, but his bow was firmly in place and his arms were gilded. From the hands of the mighty power of Jacob, from there he shepherded the stone of Israel. And it goes on, but let's think a minute. Well, you know what he says about Joseph? He was nice looking. That's what he said. The girls climbed heights to see him. I mean, it says that when Joseph was in Egypt, he would walk down the street, right? It says the young girls used to climb up in their houses and look out the window to see him, because he was like in the road. They would want to see him. He's so attractive. Right? He was, it was like really nice looking guy. They all wanted to see him. So you say, Yaakov, come on, give me a hand, give me a break. This is what you say about your favorite son, the next leader of the Jewish people that changed the world. He supported the entire world by what he did. His economical and his financial ability saved the world from destruction. He brings down his whole family to Egypt and takes care of them. Joseph the righteous is Joseph the provider. That's what it says in the Torah, right? And this is how you bless him. He's nice looking. He's nice looking. I'll tell you, as much as we might work on trying to look good, you don't make yourself nice looking. You can make yourself look better, but you can't make yourself nice looking if you're not. Your parents did that, and they didn't even really do it. It happened because of them, but they don't. There's no. If someone comes to me and says, you're the nicest looking rabbi I ever met, oh, that'd be nice. I mean, thank you very much. You can keep saying it. I don't mind. But I didn't have anything to do with it, right? If you say, oh, you know more than anybody, that I worked at, and it's not true, but that I work at. You've worked on your character and you're a nice person. Okay, that's something I could have worked at. But that I'm nice looking? So what's he doing? Saying, Yosef, so nice looking? You know how nice looking my son is? The girls climb up ladders to be able to look over the wall and see him in the backyard getting a suntan. Right? That's what he puts in the Torah. That's weird, right? So you have to understand the next part, which is it's only in the Hebrew. It says Ben Porus Yosef. Yosef was a very charming, special person. But then it says Ele Ayin Benot Seda Ele Shur. It says that a charming son to the eye, and how the girls would look at him. He's saying here that the Ayin Hara, the evil eye, has no power over Joseph. In other words, what is the evil eye? We talk about it all the time. You know what it really is? What the evil eye is in Hebrew? Ayin hara. What is it really? So ayin hara is a power that we believe that actually people have. And you may not even know you have it. And you may not want to have it. But some people have it. And if you're jealous of somebody and you have the ability of ayin hara, then if that person who you're jealous of is ostentatious or arrogant, then the ayin hara will affect them and knock them down. Right? That's why you always see the great people who fall down all the time. And, no matter how great they are, something happens. Right? How you have the handsome, rich, wonderful, and then boom. Right? You say, why would God do that to them? It's not necessarily the case. The idea of ayin hara is that if I have a blessing, right? I have something good. Let's say I had 10 sons, and they're all smart, and they all work hard. I got 10 of them, right? And I go bragging. You say to me, I've got my sons are so nice. Your sons. I got 10 sons, and they're all terrific, right? So what happens is if you have the ability to give the ayin hara, and you may not even know you have it, and I upset you by saying that, I'm being arrogant, and you're jealous of it, then something bad's going to happen. God forbid it, but something bad happens, right, to the person who's arrogant. Because that's what the ayin hara does. It's the evil eye. It's like, you look at somebody like, you're upset with them. Right? And that's where it comes from. So therefore, we do things to ward off the evil eye, because in general, we believe that people don't even know they can do it. They're not trying. Nobody really wants to hurt you. But, you upset them. But for a minute, then it goes away. But they could hurt you in that way. So we do things. So it says that Yosef, as a part of his blessing, he was a very handsome man, right? And he had very good abilities, and he changed the world. And no matter what, he was so good that nothing bad could happen to him. Because in order for something bad to happen, you have to do something. In other words, they say politicians got to be really careful, because if they do anything wrong, someone will investigate them and find it out, right? So what if you're a politician and you don't do anything wrong? Then they can't find anything out, right? So Yosef was a person who didn't do things wrong. He was Yosef the tzaddik, Yosef the righteous. He did what he was supposed to do, right? So if people tried to knock him down, they couldn't. So even though he had all of the beauty and all of the money and all of the wealth and everything that a leader would have, nobody could knock him down. He was immune to the ayin hara. And we're told that was genetic. That from him, anybody from the tribe of Joseph is immune to the ayin hara. And it says that later on, there was a great rabbi in the days of the Mishnah. It says that he was not only he was great intellectually, and he was a great leader, and he was a prince. He was like the prince of the Jews. That it says that he was so handsome also that there was a belief, not just a Jewish belief, but there was a world belief that if a woman, if she was ovulating and she was going to have relations with her husband and get pregnant, so as soon as she would ovulate and then and he would impregnate her, the first thing that she would see after that, right, would affect the fetus. This was a belief that the ancients had. So they said that they used to do is that this rabbi would sit outside the mikveh and he'd study Torah. And when the women would come out, they'd see him, and he was very handsome. I mean, he was so handsome, it says that the Caesar's daughter, when they killed the rabbis, wanted his head because he was so handsome. So they went, and he was very handsome, very learned. So the women would want their children to be like him, and so they would put them there. The Gemara actually asked, "How could you do that? You sit outside the mikveh." Right? It's it's a little distasteful. I mean, it's women, and you're not supposed to think of women in that way. They're equals. They're intellectuals. They're spiritual. They're not sex objects. And you're sitting outside the mikveh. You know why they're going to the mikveh, right? So doesn't it bother you? So he said, no. To me, these women are like white geese. What he meant was that they're like these. They're in the physical sense, they were like beautiful. But I'm not attracted. And he was an old man. I'm not attracted, like, I don't have, this type of desire like that. So he was able to do that. Now, we would say, yeah, it's a joke, because we can't imagine somebody like that. But in those days, it was definitely possible. You had people who were that angelic, who would only see people in the best way. They wouldn't see people in a negative way or in a sexual way. They saw them only in a positive way all the time. So they said that he did that. But the point I'm telling you is how they said, how could you sit there? Because someone will give you the Ein Hara. You're sitting there, you're a great scholar, you're very rich, and you're handsome. So someone's going to say, what an arrogant guy sitting outside the mikveh, right? And then you're going to lose something. He said, no, I'm the offspring of Yosef. I come from Yosef. The Ein Hara doesn't affect me. That's why I'm telling you the story. Though it says that's what it's referring to here. So Yosef had that ability, that even if the girls would stare at him and people were jealous of him, because you could imagine, he went through a tough life. But in the end, he was, the second most powerful man in the world. He lived in a castle. His children ran the country with him. He was respected by everybody. The king, like you imagine if you have a king, king's different than a president or a prime minister. One way is that the treasury of the country is the king's bank account. Now here, if the Prime Minister Harper decides he's going to take a couple of bucks and take a trip, he'll lose his job, go to jail. But the king owns the bank account. So when he taxes you, you're just putting money in his bank account. It's my money. You can't tell me what to do with my money. I'm the king. Yosef was the king. He was like that. I mean, there was a pharaoh over him, but he was at that level. So he had everything. And yet that was the blessing that his father gave him, that he should not be the kind of person that would have problems. And he would be the kind of person who would have all of his wonderful things, but he wouldn't be arrogant. So he gets that blessing. Then it says at the end here, on 283, all of these are the tribes of Israel, 12, and this is what their father spoke to them, and he blessed them. He blessed each according to his own blessing. And then he instructed them, I shall be gathered to my people, bury me with my fathers. And then he goes on and he dies. Now, a couple of things happened. As I said before, it was unnecessary for all of them to be together, but they were. He put them together because he wanted to show that they had risen above the children that they were when they did to Yosef what they did, and that they came to terms and they repented. It also says that when they were put around the bed, like there was 12 sons and their father's in bed dying, so they're all standing around the bed. The way that they stood around the bed, the Gemara says, is the way they traveled in the desert. You have the ark in the center and the 12 tribes around it, and they traveled the same way. So why is that? Because the point is that when a father is dying, is a very stressful time for the kids. And yet they were able to unite and be together, right, as a group, because right at this time. So the father wanted that when they went into the desert, and they would travel through the desert, it would also be a stressful time. But they already learned from their father, Yaakov, how to act and stay united. But that's why he put them in the same order that later on they would be. Right? And then it says that his father dies, and Yosef promises to take his father back to Israel. Of course, Yosef himself doesn't go back to Israel; he dies beforehand. But that promise is kept by Moshe. Moshe carries the bones of Yosef back to Israel, where he's buried in Shechem.